Hey guys, welcome to my review of this Audi RS6 Avant Performance. I actually featured one of these back in the summer of 2023 when it was launched, but I had to get my hands on another one for 4 very valid reasons. Number 1, I love the C8 generation RS6, especially this performance variant. Number 2 is I've recently driven the new G99 M5 Touring. Number 3, the RS6, as we know it at least, with that thumping V8, won't be around for much longer. And my 4th and final reason is next week I'm getting the keys to the RS6 Avant GT, a very special car. And I wanted to compare the two back to back, well, at least with muscle memory. This particular press car is the top spec £135,000 carbon Vorsprung version. But don't worry, there are some cheaper versions available. If you've watched some of my recent videos, you'll know that I absolutely love these wheels. They come standard on the top spec Vorsprung version and on the middle carbon black edition. And they are also on an RS Q8 Performance that I tried at the back end of last year. I think they look absolutely stunning. They're so far away from today's ugly aero style wheels. Something else I love about this particular press car is the grenadine red paintwork. It probably stands out a bit more in the shots that I took of it a few days ago when this car was clean. It's no secret that I love my BMWs, and at the back end of last year I ordered a G99 M5 Touring from Mr. Tony Lewis. But I would be lying to you if I didn't admit that I think the C8 RS6 is a better looking car from every single angle. It's absolutely drop dead gorgeous, and I think it's a lot prettier and a lot more resolved than some of Audi's very recent design language. Under this bonnet we'll find Audi's familiar 4-litre V8 twin turbo, except in this performance version it now produces 630 horsepower and 850 newton meters of torque. That maximum torque figure is available from just 2,300 RPM. All of that power and torque runs through a ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox and is fed to the ground via Audi's all-wheel drive Quattro system. They claim this will do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 3.4 seconds, and we'll be testing that out a little bit later. They also claim it will go into a limited top speed of 174 miles an hour. Let's test out this car's claimed acceleration figures. Audi say it will do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 3.4 seconds. Conditions outside are okay. Relatively dry, greasy in places, but it's 5 degrees and the tyres are stone cold. So let's see how this hooks up off the line. I've got all the traction control and stability control switched off. I'm going to let the gearbox do the shifting, but I'm in sports automatic. My Racebox Mini is ready to go. My left foot is hard down on the brake, right foot on the accelerator. Here we go, launch control program activated. My goodness. 3.01 seconds to 60 miles an hour, not 62. It's been lovely being behind the wheel of an RS6, especially an RS6 Performance again. It's been about 18 months since I was last in one, and in fact at the back end of 2022 I was fortunate enough to run a non-performance C8 RS6 as a long-termer for about 3.5 months, and I absolutely fell in love with that car, did loads of miles with it, took it on lots of trips, including out to the snow. It really got under my skin, and it certainly made me realise and respect just how mighty the RS6 is. Not that I ever doubted that, but I think sometimes living with a car, you really do uncover a lot more, and it's not just that thumping V8 and straight line pace. This car is the full package. I've mentioned the incredible ride quality in these many times before, and in fact, exactly this time last year, I got my hands on a beautiful Ascari Blue RS7 Performance. So essentially the same car, but in an RS7 shell. Some think it's prettier, some don't. Personally, I would always have an RS6 over an RS7 just because it's a bit more practical, and I love wagons, although that particular RS7 in that particular spec and colour, well, it was beautiful and it received a lot of compliments. And it's very easy to look at one of these and assume that it's not going to ride that well, because although you know it's going to be a rocket ship with well over 600 horsepower and 850 newton meters of torque, when you look at those gorgeous 22-inch wheels for the first time and you understand the performance and ability of these, you would assume that it would be hard-edged. You'd assume that the ride would be quite busy and not that comfortable on a UK road. I can tell you now, your assumption would be very, very wrong. And that is just one reason that makes the RS6 such a fantastic UK car. I'm yet to drive the new M5 on a UK road, but it is a question I've been asked about a lot. And in fact, in a couple of weeks' time, I'll get the keys to an M5 Saloon from BMW UK, so I'm looking forward to running that before I pick up my very own M5 Touring. Let's start with price comparison. A base RS6 Performance is £117,500 here in the UK. A base M5 Touring is £4,000 less at £113,500. And actually, a base M5 Touring comes with more standard equipment compared to a base RS6 Performance. Things like the wonderful BMW head-up display comes standard on the M5. So in terms of value, on paper and at first glance at least, the M5 appears to take the win. Interior-wise, the M5 has a better driving position and it has more superior seats that support you more and are just as comfortable as these. The M5 seats also suit and fit lankier frames like mine. And as you would expect from a platform that is a lot newer, the M5 has more technology. It doesn't just come with more standard equipment, it comes with better technology, because this platform is 6 or 7 years old now, and I'm sure the next generation of A6 or A7, whatever Audi decides to call it, well, that will then have even better and more up-to-date technology, and that's kind of how it works. There's always one manufacturer that's ahead in terms of their platform, and in this comparison's case it's the BMW, because the current 5 Series is a newer car, it's a newer platform, so you would hope and think that the technology inside it is of a slightly newer generation. But as I've mentioned in various recent 5 Series videos, the quality and the fit and finish on the new 5 Series has dropped substantially, and I think the materials they use and just the way it's screwed together isn't as good as the older G30 5 Series. And I really think that Audi's interior, at least on first glance and in the time that I get to spend behind the wheel of these, well, I would say that this interior is now a nicer place to be, and it is screwed together better. When we go back to a point that we just talked about, the fact this car is 6, 7, maybe even 8 years old in terms of its infrastructure, that's really good going, but it's also scary on behalf of BMW, for me especially, to say that I think their interior has just gone down a little bit in recent years. The current 5 and 7 Series are nothing like they used to be. Also in Audi's favour, well, that massive boot behind me with those rear seats folded up, you get 565 litres. That's a whopping 65 litres more than you get in the M5 Touring. And I'm sure most of that has to do with all of the hybrid stuff that you do cart around in the M5 Touring. We'll get to that shortly. So in terms of cabin quality, fit and finish, touch points, boot space, and probably overall practicality, the RS6 gets it. But in terms of technology, driving position, and the seats themselves, the M5 wins. We know this is blisteringly fast, at least in a straight line. 0 to 60 in basically 3 seconds flat is ridiculous, and every bit as quick as the new M5 Touring. And in fact, Carwow have recently done a drag race between this exact press car and an M5 Saloon, and both cars are tied up to about 60, 70, maybe 80 miles an hour. It's always hard to tell. But then beyond that, the extra power and all of that extra torque, remember the M5 has 1,000 Newton meters, well, the M5 starts to pull a little bit of a lead. But in reality, in everyday driving, especially on the road, up to road legal speeds, there is absolutely nothing between them. You've also got to factor in that at the time of filming, Carwow could only access the M5 Saloon. An M5 Touring weighs about 80 kilos more. So when you factor in that weight differential, well, those drag races would be even closer again. But there's no doubt in my mind, just due to the extra 100 odd horsepower and 150 newton meters of torque, the M5 would still be quicker above bigger speeds, whether it's a Touring or whether it's a Saloon. We've already mentioned this car's magic ride quality on Audi's adaptive air suspension. It's really difficult for me to compare this to the M5 because the M5s I have driven have been on beautiful German tarmac, whereas the RS6, well, as we speak now, we're on UK tarmac, and although this particular road isn't too bad, this car seems to ride well everywhere, even on some of our worst roads. So I will keep that comparison until I've actually got my hands on an M5 Saloon and later down the track when I've got my own M5 Touring. But what I can say and what I can predict is I don't think the M5 will match this car. You're probably already sick and tired of people like me telling you that the new 2.5 ton M5 handles exceptionally well. And again, my limited time with that car on German roads uncovered that it felt amazing. It really does disguise most of its weight. You are aware of its mass because it's such a big car, but in terms of handling, well, I tell you what, I knew the RS6 Performance was a capable car, but I'd not spent an entire week with this one, in the UK, in the middle of winter, on slippery roads. Temperatures have been between 3 and about 6 degrees. As mentioned earlier on, it's 5 degrees today. This car is on summer rubber, probably not optimum in those temperatures, but it's been finding the most amazing grip. And on top of that, when it does run out of grip, it's so controllable. There's so much feel in this car. It has a lot more steering feel than the new M5. It has a lot more steering feel than my M3. And in fact, that's something that Audi Sport have really obviously been working on in recent years, because the RS3 has more steering feel than the M2. The RS4, even though it's aging now, definitely has more steering feel than the current M3. So whatever Audi Sport have done, well, I take my hat off to them, because the steering feel is great, the agility of the car is great. This does have rear axle steering, which I'm sure helps massively in terms of making the car and the wheelbase feel smaller and shorter than it is. But I really enjoyed my time with this car. I've had a lot of fun, and at times on really greasy sections of road, it's felt rear wheel driven, which is not something I would have ever said about Audis in the past. And although this car doesn't have the wonderful and configurable MX drive system, I do think Audi and Audi Sport engineers have nailed their setup perfectly. when I'm in comfort, I'm not too bothered about where the power and torque's going, but when I ramp it up to dynamic or one of my preset RS modes, it seems to send a lot more power and torque to the rear axle and makes this car feel really agile. The best compliment I can give the RS6 performance, or the RS7 performance for that matter, is they feel like bigger versions of the current 8Y facelifted RS3, and that car is just an absolute hoot to drive around in. This is just like that, but turned up another level in terms of performance and ability, but unfortunately it's also somewhat larger, which does in turn make it more difficult to navigate safely down a public road at pace. The main reason the new M5 Touring is 400 kilos heavier than this is because it's a hybrid, or an M hybrid as BMW like to call it. So it's carting around a heavy motor, a heavy battery pack, and everything else that accompanies that. And I guess that's a trump card for the new M5, because if you want your very fast wagon to have EV capability and run on electrical energy only, even if it is 40 odd miles, which is the realistic range of the new M5 and the M5 Touring, then that car has got it all, because obviously this is pure V8. And although I prefer the pure V8 recipe, unfortunately manufacturers like Audi and BMW are being forced into building hybrids. This will be the last of a dying breed, and we are going to miss it. We're also going to miss the soundtrack that it gives us even in 2025. How does it sound so good on the outside? And yeah, that's fast enough. It's so quick. It sounds so good. And on that note, without a doubt, this 4-litre V8 twin turbo sounds better than BMW's relatively muted 4.4-litre V8 twin turbo, the S68. Although my one hopefully won't sound too stock for too long. I think we should celebrate the fact that in 2025 we can still buy two ridiculous wagons. Both fill the same place in the market, but both offer slightly different packages. And although the RS6 as we know it in this C8 generation is definitely getting on now, it's still a brilliant car. And yes, it might show its age in various places, but it's still very relevant all the same. And I think the M5 Touring, when that finally hits the roads in a couple of weeks' time, well, that's going to complement this car, and I think this car is going to complement the M5 Touring. And although I still think I've made the right choice, because I love my BMs and I've got a predominantly BMW audience, I have to take my hat off and admit to the fact that this is just a wonderful piece of engineering. It's a wonderful car. It's a better looking car, as we talked about in the intro, and I'm really going to miss it when it's gone, because I've always been an RS6 fan from way back to the first generation when I was a lot younger. And today's RS6, in my opinion, especially this performance version, is better than ever. But it does beg the question, how good is the RS6 GT going to be? Well, I'll get to find that out in a couple of weeks' time and bring you some content onto the channel. Let's just do a little bit of dynamic driving. I've got the traction control off. I'm in RS2 now, so everything's stiffened up. I'm getting so much feel, especially through the steering wheel. Oh, so good. As soon as you pick that throttle up, even in third gear, you can feel the rear end starting to rotate a little bit. Not in a scary way, in a really progressive way. You can feel absolutely everything. It's just wonderful, this car. It really, really is. Its biggest downfall, it's just too fast for the public road. It's just way too fast for the public road. I hope you've really enjoyed this video. If you have, give us a thumbs up, leave some comments below, and I'll see you at another one very, very soon. Cheers.